Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The debate over the existence of God often hinges on the question of where the burden of proof lies. Is it the person who says that there is God, on his shoulders lies the proof, or is it the person who denies the existence of God? Does he have to present the proof? So, in this polemic discussion, let us address the common argument made uh, by disbelievers, or those persons who do not believe in the existence of God, that the burden of proof lies solely on the believers believing in the existence of God, and counter it by emphasizing the intuitive understanding that creation implies a creator. So let me begin by first putting forth the uh, argument of a disbeliever and then respond to it through a believer's view. The disbeliever uh, says, or he argues, that the burden of proof rests on those making the claim that God exists, because such a claim needs a concrete evidence. Since disbelief in God is not a claim, it's a lack of belief due to insufficient evidence. The responsibility to provide evidence lies therefore on those who are making the assertion. To this argument, a believer responds in like this, that the central premise of a believer is very simple and yet profound. He argues that when we observe the world around us, its complexity, order, and beauty, it intuitively points to the existence of a creator. This is not merely a religious assertion, but a principle grounded in common sense and philosophical reasoning. So the burden of proof lies on those who deny God by rejecting common sense. Okay, this is the position of the believer to the argument of the disbeliever that the burden lies on the shoulders of the believer. And the believer's reply to that argument is based on the intelligent design in the universe. So now comes the argument of the disbeliever. So against common sense and philosophical reasoning, natural process, and scientific explanations like evolution and cosmology can explain the complexity and order, argues the disbeliever. We observe without having to believe in a creator. So he means to say that uh, we observe these things in the universe, and there is evolution theory, there is cosmology. These can explain all these things which we see as the designs of the creator. These theories explain these things, and we do not need any believer to understand such wonderful phenomena. So without having to believe in a creator, we can understand these phenomena. These explanations are based on uh, evidence and do not assume a supernatural cause. To this, the believer can say that this stance overlooks a crucial aspect of human reasoning, which is called as causality, the principle of causality. As every effect must have a cause, is deeply embedded in our understanding of the universe. When we see a painting, we naturally infer a painter. When we see a building, we infer an architect. To see the intricate design of the universe and not infer a designer is to ignore a foundational aspect of rational thought. Therefore, the burden of proof should also lie with those challenging this fundamental inference. Okay, this is the argument made by the believer to the disbeliever. But then again, the disbeliever can just respond to this he he sees it as an appeal to ignorance. He says that just because we do not fully understand certain phenomena, it doesn't mean we should uh, uh, default to a divine explanation. It's a God of the gaps argument, which history has shown to be a fallacious approach. Okay, so this approach of the believer is fallacious to the disbeliever. Then the believer responds to this. So he says that to a believer who is rational at the same time, he believes, but his belief is rationality based. So it's not about filling gaps with God, as he says, but about recognizing that the very existence of rationality, order, and laws in nature point towards a grounding, uh, uh, mm, actually point towards a grounding in a rational source. Without a creator, one must explain how interpersonal, non rational forces give rise to personal, rational beings with a sense of morality and purpose. It's a philosophical necessity, not an argument from ignorance. Scientific explanations describe mechanisms, not ultimate causes. Evolution, for instance, explains the diversity of life, but not the origin of life or the universe. Even the laws of physics and the constants of nature, which science relies upon, they actually beg the question of why they are as they are. The fine tuning of the universe suggests intentionality. Science itself relies on the assumption of an orderly universe, an assumption that is best explained by a rational creator. Okay, this is the argument made by the believer. So the disbeliever, in response to this argument, says philosophical arguments alone don't constitute proof. We need empirical evidence, and until such evidence is provided, the non existence of God remains the default position. Okay, so in this discussion, now comes the turn of the believer to respond to this argument. Empirical evidence is not the sole uh, avenue to knowledge. Logical, philosophical, and experimental forms of evidence are equally valid. To demand only empirical evidence for God's existence is to impose an unjustifiable epistemic standard. The existence of God is inferred from the cumulative case of the universe's intelligibility, moral order, uh, personal experiences, and historical evidences. These inferences are reasonable and warrant belief. Furthermore, the claim God does not exist is itself a definitive statement requiring proof. Atheism posits a universe without a deity, without a creator, without a God. And this is a claim that must be substantiated. So, to signify, to actually simply negate the theistic claims without offering a coherent alternative explanation for the universe's origin, order, and the existence of consciousness and morality is intellectually insufficient. This perspective is a subtle evasion. Even a lack of belief implies a worldview, a materialistic or naturalistic one, that must account for the phenomena we observe. Claiming disbelief without addressing the necessity of an explanation for the existence and nature of the universe is to shirk the responsibility of providing a coherent and comprehensive worldview. The universe, with its intricate order and existence, it cries out for an explanation, and theism offers a robust answer. The responsibility to engage with these questions lies with both parties, and dismissing theistic claims without serious consideration fails the test of intellectual honesty. In this polemic, the aim is to highlight that both belief and disbelief in God carry the responsibility of justification. The inherent order and complexity of the universe provide a strong intuitive basis for the belief in a creator, thus shifting some of the burden of proof onto those who challenge this common sense inference. Thank you.